When you think of Freemasonry, you probably picture quiet halls, candlelight, secret societies that have been around forever. But what if I told you that behind all that symbolism and ceremony, something is going seriously wrong? A crisis is unfolding, and it's threatening to wipe out centuries of tradition.
So let's just get right to it. The big question here is, well, it's pretty shocking when you think about it. How can one of the world's oldest fraternities, a group that has literally survived wars, revolutions, the fall of empires, how can they be just disappearing?
And the scale of this problem, it's just staggering. I mean, look at that number. We're not talking about a small dip here or some temporary slump. That's how many members they've lost in North America in just the last 15 years. That's over 1 million men who've either walked away or passed on. And there just aren't enough new guys coming in to fill those empty seats.
So to really get a handle on what's going on, we've got to look at the data. Let's dig into the numbers behind this quiet collapse, because they really tell a story. A story about a trend that's happening everywhere, and honestly, it seems to be getting worse.
And wow, look at this. This isn't just happening in some small town somewhere. It is a full-blown nationwide problem. I mean, Ohio alone has lost over 82,000 members. Pennsylvania, down by more than 71,000. And you see it in huge states too, like Texas and California. They're losing members by the tens of thousands. This is a clear sign that something is fundamentally broken.
But here's the thing. These numbers, they aren't just statistics on a page. They're symptoms. They're a signpost pointing to a much, much deeper problem. You can't just write off a drop this big as, oh, people don't join clubs anymore. No, something else is going on here. We've got to dig deeper.
And to find that something else, we actually have to go inside. We have to look at the unique culture of Freemasonry. And it all starts with a core ideal, something our source material calls a noble silence. It's this idea of handling things quietly, of correcting each other in private.
To help us understand this, the lecture we're looking at brings up a really cool real-world example, the Chatham House Rule. Maybe you've heard of it. The basic idea is that you can talk about what was said in a meeting, but you are absolutely forbidden from saying who said it. The whole point is to let people be brutally honest without worrying about getting in trouble for it.
And that right there, that perfectly explains the intention behind the Masonic tradition of whispered counsel. See, it's not about being secretive just for the sake of it. It's supposed to be about refinement, about self-improvement. The whole idea is that you get better by having these quiet, honest, brother-to-brother conversations, away from the spotlight.
Okay, but this is where the story takes a really dark turn, because we've now reached the absolute core of this crisis. We have to ask the tough question, what happens when that noble idea of silence gets corrupted? When does something meant for discipline become a shield to protect the guilty? And our source material draws a very, very clear line in the sand here. Discretion, that's when you protect someone's dignity while you're helping them fix a mistake. But secrecy? Well, that's when you protect the mistake itself. And what's the difference between the two? It all comes down to one simple, incredibly powerful word: accountability. So when that veil of silence is never lifted, it just stops being a good thing. It's no longer a tool for making people better. It becomes a weapon. It becomes an excuse for cowards to avoid tough conversations. It becomes a shield for the corrupt to hide behind. And slowly but surely, it transforms a system that's supposed to be about morality into a system that's just about protection, protecting its own, no matter what they did.
And this is how we connect it all back to those staggering numbers we saw at the beginning. This philosophical decay, this rot from the inside, is directly tied to why people are leaving. Because when accountability goes out the window, the entire foundation starts to crumble. The cracks begin to show.
I mean, just think about it for a second. If you're in any group, and that group starts caring more about not making waves than it does about following its own rules, what happens to justice? It's not a sure thing anymore, right? It becomes negotiable. It can be bent or even just ignored, depending on who you are. And that is absolute poison for any kind of community.
And this is the path to decay. It's an inevitable chain reaction, really. It starts with no justice. When people see that, what's next? They lose trust, not just in the leaders, but in each other. And when there's no trust, forget about unity. And if you don't have unity, what even is a brotherhood? The whole thing just becomes an empty word. That's why those 1 million men left. The entire foundation just crumbled from beneath them.
So, okay, that's the problem. It's pretty bleak. But what's the solution? Is there a way back? How does an organization that's so old and so steeped in tradition, how does it pull itself back from the edge? Well, this last part is all about the proposed way forward. It's going to be tough, but it's a necessary call to action. The answer isn't to just throw away that idea of discretion. No, it's about practicing something the lecture calls measured courage. And it's basically a 3-step guide. Step 1, whisper. You know, when a quiet, private word is all it takes to fix something. Step 2, speak. You have to be willing to speak up when the truth is getting buried. And finally, step 3, stand. When the core principles, when integrity itself is on the line, you have to find the courage to stand your ground.
And what this really calls for is a total rethink of what brotherhood is supposed to be about. See, real brotherhood isn't about protecting your buddies from the consequences when they mess up. It's about caring enough about them to hold each other to a higher standard from the very beginning.
So let's leave it with this final, really provocative thought from the source. A man who hides behind silence is not practicing discretion. He is negotiating with his own integrity. Wow. That's a powerful challenge, isn't it? And it kind of leaves you wondering what happens to a man or an entire brotherhood when those negotiations finally fail.